All right, so I wanted to make a quick video. Hopefully it's quick. I know I said I was going to add some videos to the tutorial that I just released the other day for Go. I said I was going to release the end-to-end project. I made a second thought, and what I decided to do is instead of spending time making a video, like making the project and then making the video and teaching it like that does take a lot of time. What I decided to do was instead just focus on building the CLI tool and building the community. It's open source, and so if you want to contribute, I'm going to continue to make videos like explaining what the CLI does, how it works, and et cetera, et cetera. And if you want to contribute to it, you can go to my GitHub repo. Right now, it's still private. I haven't opened it up yet, but it will be public maybe tomorrow. But what I want to do in this video was just kind of go over it, introduce it, show you what I'm thinking about, give me feedback, and we can kind of build a community. The way it works is there's the way I'm thinking about doing it, and I've already started on it, was there'll be 4 modules, 4 different commands. One is the scan, and what it does is just it scans through the directory and read all of the files to make sure that they are accessible. The next command is to validate. This is in the README, so you can take a look at it in the README. But there are the other command is for validate, and is for the compliance engine. You will be it has default rules, and you will be able to add your own custom rules, and it'll validate those files that you just said or in the directory based against these rules in your custom rules. And then the third one is the report. So based on the validation, whether it's a vulnerability scan, et cetera, it will generate a report. These three commands are in there now. The fourth one, once I get everything up, the fourth one will be the AI command component, to where it uses AI to look at those reports and give more readable and better suggestions on how to feed it, how to fix those errors, and maybe some other ways too to use AI. So that's that. Let me go to it, and I made this horrible now. Okay, let me make this bigger. Yep, that's better. So now let's go over the code really quickly. I have a bash script, which is just this installs all of the libraries that we'll use. So you can just kind of go through and read that. The way it's going to work is, we looked at this. Let's look at the main. The main file is simple, and I probably don't even look at the main. So what the main file does is similar to what we did in the tutorial. It's really simple. It's going to execute everything that's in the command folder. It has a recovery, like a graceful termination. So that's not really important. I mean, it's important, but it's not nothing that we should go over. Let's look at the way the folders are structured. Is you have a package, you have internal, and you have the command. The command is the actual commands that uses these internal and package. And so I'm going to go inside of the rules first. Let's look at the config. So this is the default config. This comes out of the box. So when you run it, what you want to do is set these as the paths to where you want to scan. And again, we only set markdown. I think I added checks to make sure that if you run it against something else, it'll fail. Because we don't accept JSON at the moment. So you put your scan path, and I will show you that example of that as well, so you can make sure that we're on the same page. Where's my folder? Move this out of the way. Right here. So these are 3 different test directories. One is the default. So this will scan in my default. So this is on my desktop. it's at, whatever test files default, and then it's saying look inside of this a test file to where to scan. So I have this Docker file that's invalid, and it doesn't meet like the requirement. It uses latest, and it doesn't use all of the other rules, the best practices. This is the valid Docker. It uses the correct version, like 20.0, and it follows the best standards using apt-get in install. And then this is an invalid manifest. I can't remember what all it doesn't have, but it doesn't meet the right format. And I'm gonna show you the rules in a minute. And this is the valid manifest, which does have the resources and whatever else is necessary. So this here, it shows you where to scan. This shows you, and you can update this as well to the rules. And I'm gonna show you how to do it. I'm gonna show you how to do all that as well. And so for right now, it's gonna use the default rules. But later on, I'm gonna show you how to pass in a flag to like change the rules. So these are the rules that come by default. And you can kind of read over on that. And this is the output report. This is where you want to have your MD report. And then strict mode. Right now, this doesn't work. But what the strict mode is what it will do is it'll allow you to say which of these rules are strict and which are just, are nice to have. And so whenever you add the rules, you will be able to put in, okay, so like kind is strict. I'm not strict, critical. So kind is critical, metadata.name is critical, et cetera. And so if you have this as false, it doesn't matter if it's critical or not. But if you have it as true, then if it's missing those critical, then it will raise the error. So that's that. Let's go over the compliance. So this is the internal folder. Let me close that. And let's look at the model. So the model just follows that that required files, the rules that we just had. And this is so in a code, this is what it uses, like it validates against this. And that's that. And these are some validation rules that it goes against. I don't think anything right here is that important. This right here just validates that if someone tries to like put in rules that we don't accept, like if you want to, if you put in a rule in your custom rule that allows duplicates, so if you have spec.replicas twice, this will ignore it. There's another one that if you just put in an empty rule, it ignored. And so like some different edge cases, this is what that's for, to like validate that some people don't do malicious stuff with the rules. So let's go over that. Now this is the internal compliance. So the compliance, this is the orchestrator here. And what it does is it does a case, a switch, which is what we saw in the tutorial, the series. If it's a Kubernetes, it will use that Kubernetes. So like if it ends in a YAML or a .yml, it will use the Kubernetes validator. And if it contains Docker in it, so if you notice like the Docker file is docker.invalid, so it just says if the file name contains Docker, then it will use Docker validator. So this is the orchestrator to decide which compliance rule we're going to use. So now let's look at the Kubernetes. And this file parser is just to help read in those YAML files and those Docker files, and just to kind of put it in the format that the code uses. You can read through that. Let's look at the Kubernetes first. So this is the Kubernetes. This is the different validation that it uses. The first step is it validates against those rules that we just have here. And if there's an error, it'll give you an error. It does pod security. The next one it does is the network policy. And what this does is if there is no network policy in it, it will give you this warning. This is what I was saying, that no network policy defined for the workload. Consider adding one for better security. And if there is, then it will validate against that. Okay, so yeah, this does network security, and it parses that and it checks against that. Yep. So take a look at that. And then now on to the Docker validator. The Docker validator does use these libraries here, Docker file parser. And there's some steps for this. It reads the Docker, it parses and analyzes Docker files. This here will Docker parse the Docker content using build kit parser. It also, after that, it would do a linting, and then it checks for secrets in the Docker. So with that said, let's look at the Docker too. Oh yeah, we've already looked at the Docker. So let me show you how you can run it. So let me come over here. It's not the right terminal. I ended up closing the wrong terminal. I was still in the old one. My apologies. And so now we want to build it first. So just make sure that it's built. Let me see. It should be already there, but we're just going to remove it. ScanRunner, so we don't have it, and then we just build it again. ScanRunner main.go, and we'll have that. Okay, so help is, I'm not really sure why the help wasn't working. Let me see. I think I've spelled it wrong. My eyes are going bad. I can't really see. Make the terminal a little bigger. Okay, so we can see that when we do help, these are the commands available. So we have the scans the directory. We have the validate, as we said. We have version, and we have report. These are the flags that you can pass in for this scan, which is the config. And if we do, let's say validate -help, we'll see that this is the validate, and these are the flags you can pass in as well. So when you validate, you can pass in a config file for that, as well as when you scan. So when you scan, you can pass in a config, and when you validate. And I point that out, because if you want to scan and you want to add a custom configuration for where to look for, but you want to use the default rules, then you can do that. And if you want to, whenever you validate, if you want to use the default rules, you could do that as well, or you can use custom rules. So now I'm just going to paste this in. I don't feel like typing all of this in. But this will scan based on, well, first let me scan based on the default, just so you can see that. So it's scanned based on the default. And as we remember, this is the default here. Go to default config. This is the default, and it's just pointing to this folder here, this test default test files, and it's going to come here. And if we come here, we can see it found the discovered files. We found the Docker invalid, Docker valid, invalid manifest, and valid manifest. So these are the ones that we found. Now let's validate it. And so if we see, it's kind of clear. Let's clear it out so we can see it better. So this says warning. So as I told you, it's going to point out the warning, but these are the validation results. The Docker invalid failed. And it said linting line 2, avoid using latest tag from directories for better reproducibility. It passed the Docker valid. The invalid manifest, it failed Kubernetes. Let me read this says. Kubernetes manifest invalid. It's missing the required field metadata annotation, and it passed a valid one. And so if we want to make sure there's no report in there now, if we want to run that report, we say report. And so it's generating the markdown file. And if we come here, we can now see the report, and it just gives us out a report of what we just saw from the terminal earlier. And so now if we want to pass in, if we want to pass in a custom configuration, I'm going to pass this in. It's going to just point to this test file now. This is, and you can point this to anywhere, but it's going to point to the test config1, which is, close this up, this here, test config1. And this config file does, it pretty much does the same thing as this one, but, and then these are the rules, which are the same rules. We're just showing you that if you want to use custom rules, you can use custom rules and custom configuration, and it'll do the same thing. It scans it. And then if you want to close it out and then do validate. And so we see we get a fail for the same reason. For the invalid, we fail. And for the valid, we pass. For the invalid, we fail. And for the valid, we pass. And so that's pretty much how you do it. You can pass in the strict as well. You can pass in the format. So you can pass this in. It's not going to run because scan and say report format equals markdown. This should work. Okay, so maybe format error. Okay, so yeah, so I don't think I fully added that in correctly. So yeah, but everything else works as it is. Of course, this is working. This is in work in progress. Like, it's a lot of stuff that I wrote that, yeah, if you want to contribute again, please contribute. I will drop the link to the GitHub repo in this video. It's open source. Give me some insights on it. Give me your thoughts on it, and let's go get it. All right. Thanks for watching.